Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Jenkins. I'm going to be chairing this webinar on the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the US market. We're going to be joined fairly shortly by Terry Dale, who's having one or two technical difficulties, but we're going to start anyway because I want to start on time. I'm delighted to be joined by Jennifer Tombaugh of Tauck, Francesca Smiderle of Worldstride, and of Robyn Stencil, who's joining us from Seattle on the West Coast. Good morning, Robyn. She's from Rick Steves. And we're going to be looking largely at the groups market today. It's possible a future webinar may look at the FIT market, which may be of particular interest in the forthcoming months. But I want to just start by drawing your attention to the work that we're doing at ETOA on the coronavirus situation on the main web page. And if you were to go to the ETOA website, and I believe my colleague is pulling up the website now on your screen, you'll see that there is a hub page which contains things like the weekly bulletin and links to webinars and the webinar polling data. And if you scroll down, you get a further link to the main COVID-19 page. There are also information there on webinars that we've had and webinars we will be having. And on the main COVID-19 page, there really is a wealth of resources. Aaron at the moment is scrolling down. I'm not directly in charge of this, but you will see that there is a bunch of multinational resources together with information from the European Commission. And further on, we've got resources from pan-European international bodies and individual countries. And all the information about what's happening in those individual countries is listed there, or as much information we can gather. It's being updated daily. If there's any information that you think that's missing, please let us know. One thing I'd just like to draw your attention to is the European Commission, who really has been having a reasonably tough time because under COVID-19, each nation state within Europe has quite reasonably tackled it as a national emergency, not a even though it is a pan-European emergency, they regarded it as their national responsibility to look after their constituents. It means that each nation has been acting unilaterally, effectively, and it's been very difficult for the European Commission to force any degree of conformity in what people are doing. Nevertheless, they have just issued a document within the last hour outlining a roadmap towards a coordinated lifting of COVID-19 containment measures. And this is really rather an important document, and it marks the European Commission deciding that it is able, it's always been wanting to, it is able actually to move in and start trying to coordinate what people are doing. And so if you're interested in such things, you may find things as being of only passing interest, but if you're interested in these things, this is the place to go and find them. So that's the website. We're going to be looking at the United States market today. Why? Very simply, of all the long-haul markets for Europe, the US is by far the most important. Last year we were expecting, well, last year we got approximately 18 million visitors from the United States. This year we were looking for a boom year. With a strong dollar and a buoyant stock market, we were expecting growth both in the ad hoc group sector, which was looking very buoyant, and in the scheduled group sector. We were looking at growth between 5 and 10% across the board. This is obviously not going to happen. If you look at the latest STR data on hotel occupancy and hotel yield in Europe, the hotels in Europe are showing, unsurprisingly, 100% decline in RevPAR. This is clearly a catastrophic falling off in demand for hotels. And in Europe, we also have a complete denial of product. There's nothing to sell at the moment, even if there was demand in the origin market. The scale of the problem that we're looking at is probably fairly familiar, but I would like just to start by asking the panelists that we have here what the situation is from their point of view, what's happened to their companies, and what the general sentiment is. Can we just start with Robyn to start off with down at the bottom right, who's joining us from Seattle, and we have Terry joining us. Hi, Terry.
Hello there, Tom. Hey, Jennifer.
Yeah, Terry and I, I'm delighted to say, along with Jennifer, the people who dress for work. I am actually in work, but anyway, keep going. Sorry, Robyn, please. I'm just asking Robyn, Terry, what the situation is from her point of view.
Right. So obviously we're in the same boat as everyone else, kind of going day by day. We have a weekly meeting where we discuss what's going on across the different countries where we have our tour program. Currently, we have decided to cancel tours through the middle of June. We're hopeful, we were talking about being optimistic earlier, we're hopeful that at least some parts of Europe will reopen at the end of the summer or in the fall. And of course, we have to wait and see what will happen in the United States as well to see what kind of restrictions and regulations we have for leaving. So what's happened, we've had to cancel most of our spring so far through mid-June. We were trending to have an up year, like Tom was mentioning. All of the US tourism to Europe was projected to be even stronger this year. We are on track to have another record year at work, over 1,000 departures, 40 itineraries, and close to 35,000 tour members. And so far that's declined quite a bit, significantly, as you can imagine. And that's where we're at. We're just going week by week.
Okay. Francesca, how's everything at Worldstride?
So we started doing the booking the summer groups, so the groups for June, July, and August. We started a couple of weeks ago. We already started seeing that the groups want to be rebooked the next year. Still, some groups are still scheduled to travel in June, July, which personally, I don't foresee they're going to come. All depends as well what is going to happen in USA. So we're just keeping a close eye. And then we're also looking at our main destination is Italy and France. So we are looking very closely and see what's going to happen the next couple of weeks. So when the lockdown is going to be over, how are those countries acting? So a lot of things at the moment that we are just, we don't make a decision 100%. We don't know what's going to happen. We just keep, up to date with the news. Like we saw, there is Italian government is talking about wearing masks all the time, limiting the number of tourists going inside the attraction. So a lot of things, a lot of speculation at the moment, but we're just waiting and see what's happening in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Francesca. Jennifer.
Very, very similar. Again, we, like others, we're projecting to have a banner year just, let's see, 7 weeks ago. Maybe 8 weeks ago, I was standing in front of all of our entire company at our annual meeting, talking about what a record year we were on track to enjoy and bring guests all over the world to explore. And obviously, that's not happening. We are now shut down through the end of June. But similar to what's been said, we're looking to build in as much optionality as possible. So we're making our decisions on sort of a rolling 3 to 4 week basis. Because this has evolved negatively so quickly, we're hoping to see some positive openings. We're already seeing obviously something in Israel, also obviously in Germany. So those are signs of hope for us. And so we want to allow that, again, that possibility and that flexibility for any kind of third quarter operations. There's really two questions. One is, what is actually going to be open? And then the question is, will Americans even be welcome? And it was great and I wrote down, Tom, thank you for providing that information about the coordination of the EC and all of this, because, the challenge too is when you travel like we do on our river cruises where you're visiting multiple countries, the lack of coordination. So even if Germany opens, we may not be able to run anything on the river because of the other countries that obviously border the Rhine and Danube. So it's a challenging time, obviously, for everyone, but the question of openness, the question of coordination, and then the question about kind of will Americans even be allowed to visit? When will that quarantine be lifted? Will be part of the equation as well. So far, we're seeing bookings continue to hold through the end of the third quarter and into the fourth. So we know that people want to go. I don't think it's a question of demand. 21 looks strong. We're even seeing 22 come into play as Oberammergau obviously was closed and people moving into their wanting to continue to see that performance and move into 2022. So there's reasons to be optimistic down the road. It's just the question and the uncertainty now that's so challenging to navigate. And for us, it's just been building in that flexibility.
Crikey. Terry, what do you, I ought to introduce you. You're the Chief Executive of USTOA. You have a group of tour operators there that you represent. I'm just wondering what the feedback you're getting from them.
You know, Tom, first of all, thank you for coordinating this and hosting us today. I really appreciate it. And if there's a silver lining coming through this pandemic, it's that we now have a new way of communicating that certainly I never leveraged because I'm technologically challenged, but I do eventually get to where I need to be. So it's great to be here with you today. I want to say that we have several different working groups on different topics at USTOA. And what I hear from our members, of which Jennifer is an active participant, is that, you know, we are hopeful that the third and fourth quarter will start being able to get the US traveler to different parts of the world. But as Jennifer pointed out, and I don't need to repeat, we don't know yet. So what I hold on to is the fact that the US traveler has become more resilient. I remember 15 years ago talking about the US traveler who was risk adverse. But we've learned over time, whether it's September 11th or Mother Nature flexing her muscle or a geopolitical event, the US traveler has started to adapt. And this pandemic will be a new challenge for everyone to adapt to. But I think that we will. And I think the pent-up demand will be there. It'll just be where we have access to go. But we're starting to see things free up even in our country. And I'm sure Jennifer has seen, you know, some southern states like Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, they're starting to relax the, you know, shut-in clause, stay-at-home clause. So I think it's going to be an evolution. It's going to be a roller coaster ride, to be quite truthful. And but we're hopeful. We're hopeful.
I mean, it's very, very difficult because the government's got to obviously do a balancing act between effectively keeping people out of hospitals and keeping the economy rolling. And it's proved to be beyond every government in the world to get this right. Maybe one or two exceptions are doing better than others, but it's an enormous task. Do you think when recovery comes, it will be a gradual thing, or do you think confidence will come back in a flood? Like, can I take Jennifer's answer to that question first, and then we'll go around the table?
Yeah, in my view, it all depends on when there's a therapeutic and specifically a vaccine available. I think that you will see certainly some gradual opening, and it will be a cadenced opening. Probably with some domestic travel, as if China is any guide, and you've seen that already happen there, where there is sort of inter-country travel that is happening. But until that there's a vaccine and people feel, or some other way of either contact tracking or some personal guarantee of safety, this is what makes this so different than 9/11 or the financial crisis. This is about an individual's health and well-being. So yes, there could be reassurances about the state of healthcare in that particular country that might help. There can be cleaning and health protocol standards that will help, but the floodgates will open once there is a vaccine and once there is an ability for people to feel confident about their own personal health.
Yeah, is that your perception, Francesca?
Yeah, exactly the same. When it's going to be a vaccination, people will want to travel, will be confident to travel, they will be safe. But until then, I think it's going to be a very slow progress.
So Robyn, is that the same with you?
Yeah, I think our travelers still want to go. They're hopeful to go. From our perspective, it seems more like the demand is there. There's just a lot of uncertainty about the rules and regulations about getting everyone over there, even in terms of can they get there? Even if after a vaccine is created, what is the infrastructure surrounding actually physically getting to Europe? So I think we're going to see for a while more demand than can be accommodated.
Well, I mean, in normal situations, that would be a good thing to have, but we're not in normal situations. Terry, I mean, how do you see that? Do you see the shape of the recovery forming that?
In my opinion, it's going to be local, regional, national, and then global. And when I ran New York City's tourism board during September 11th, we created packages for New Yorkers that included a hotel room, dinner at a restaurant, and a Broadway theater ticket. And they actually were wildly overstating, but they were popular. But I think that this will probably play out somewhat similar. You know, at some point you're going to feel more comfortable to just kind of explore your backyard and then explore the national parks. And then we'll get to the place where we can go internationally. And I think the first place that people will think of will certainly be Europe, will be top of mind, because it's our bread and butter. But it'll be a phased approach.
I wonder. I mean, you say this. I remember your predecessor calling me on September the 18th, 2001. And he called me up because one of his members had launched an advertisement in the New York Times in the days when travel companies still do advertisements in the New York Times, and I want to stress that, particularly if the New York Times is watching. But they were doing a 6-night package in Dublin. I think it was for $399 air inclusive. And he called me to say they sold out within 2 hours. He goes, I want you to know that America travels if the price is right. I'm wondering, and you can reply to this, Terry, because I'm sure you will. I'm wondering what we may see as some extraordinary, there is extraordinary availability in Europe at the moment. No one can look at Europe and say that place suffers from over-tourism. There is not a single venue in Europe that can claim that. Yeah. And if we suddenly see the floodgates open for offers, it's possible the consumers, if they feel safe, and that's Jennifer's point, if they feel safe, it's possible they may take that bait. Terry, what are you about to reply to?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's a slippery slope to go down. And I know the temptation is always there to provide just rock bottom rates, but then to build up those rates over years can take years. So I would not advise us going down that path of just giving away the shop just to get people and bodies there. You can provide value, but I would be careful in doing something that extreme. It's easy for me to say, though. It's not my business. So
I'm just thinking that I would also agree with you strategically, but there are players out there whose job is not to think strategically for the whole industry, but to think in their interests and their prospective clients' interests. No, you're dead right. We don't want to portray what we do as a bargain basement offer, but we're handling a highly perishable product here, and if that's what it takes to kickstart demand, that's what it takes to kickstart demand. Jennifer, do you have an angle on this?
I agree with Terry overall. I think that price is not going to trump personal security and health here. I think that when the markets do open, though, there will be an expectation about value. Now, I don't necessarily mean that in terms of price. I mean that in terms of perhaps enhanced experiences or other added value components that might offer encouragement. I think if you look at, and there's a lot been written about this, about the Asian hotel market in particular post-SARS, that what they found with their patrons, with their repeat travelers, is they were looking for value adds. Perhaps with driving new, there might be a price offer that's out there, but for most of us have very loyal followings across the business, which is a wonderful, wonderful blessing to have, and we are so grateful for those folks. They're not coming back because we're going to offer them a cheaper price. They're going to come back because they want an experience that they feel is going to be enhanced in some way. And so there's lots of ways that we're talking and encouraging to do that. Right now, we're encouraging retention through a value add for future bookings. So those types of, I think, elements will have some expectation, but I think it would be wrong to say it's just going to be bargain basement pricing.
No. Francesca, have you got an angle on that?
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit a mix of both. And each bit price. So, of course, I mean, I can already say the prices might go down next year. But at the same time, we need to make sure the country is safe. We offer a product that is absolutely safe. And that is the fine line that I think is going to be tricky to get, because you need to make sure that, you know, we deal with students. And if I've got my kid traveling abroad, I want to make sure my kids are going to be safe. They're not going to end up in the hospital. And that is going to be my prime, you know, concern. So, but money is also going to play into place. So both of them, you know, we're looking into it. Let's see.
Robyn, what's the Rick Steves take on this?
Well, first of all, I think something that Jennifer said, and that's about loyalty. And I think that as with our tour members, 40% are repeat clients, they trust our judgment. So I think that goes in part along with the safety and keeping them healthy. They trust that we're making the decisions on their behalf, that we wouldn't be running something unless we felt it was safe. So I think there's that assurity there. Also, I think something that no one's spoken about yet is this sort of two-prong approach. One is nostalgia, people wanting to go back to see how some of their favorite places have fared. And the other one is the kind of FOMO, people who have never been before and have been through this now saying, you know what, I don't want to wait another year. We don't know what's going to happen a week from now. And I think we'll see an upsurge in both of those areas.
Hey,
Terry.
Tom, can I just jump in again? You know, I'm not bashful. So I think, you know, what Robyn was saying and all of us are saying, there is another silver lining here, which is how we position and communicate the value that we offer as that safety net. And I think that the tour operator and the travel advisor is going to be valued now more than ever. They're going to recognize that we need people who are informed, are educated, are going to look out for our safety and our security, and therefore I'm going to use tour operator X and I'm going to use a travel advisor. So I do think there's an opportunity for us to really drive home the value that our members deliver.
Well, that's a clarion call. Jennifer, sorry.
I would echo that wholeheartedly. I mean, you've seen this time and time again. Anytime that there is a global event, and I know all of us were probably in places where we were running operations as this horrible virus started to unfold around the country, and we had to get our guests home quickly. And there was a great camaraderie among the industry of helping each other out to do that. And there were many individual travelers who unfortunately did not have that support network. And that was very disconcerting for many people, which is obviously understandable. And so I totally agree that as an industry, we have a significant advantage that plays to that point of what Robyn called, rightly named trust, but also the integrity and the collaboration and the standards that we all have to vet these different programs before we turn them on again to welcome our guests back. And so it's something, it's a responsibility I don't think any of us take lightly at all, but it's something that does distinguish us among other travel options out there.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think everybody involved in ETOA are persuaded of the virtue of booking through intermediaries and booking through trusted intermediaries. We've got a poll that we conduct on these things, and I'm going to launch the poll that we have. I'm just going to ask the 350 odd people which poll, which is basically, it's coming through. It's thinking about the industry across your market. What do you think will be the biggest challenge after the crisis? Do you think it's economic resources and access to financial help? Or do you think it's cancellation and refunds? Or do you think it's retaining talent? Obviously, a lot of companies are having a lot of tough time retaining talent at the moment. We'll just see how the votes come in on that. Now, one question I have is similarly, sorry, I've got a big poll screen on my face, it's like disconcerting. Just out of interest, this is placing a huge pressure on 2021. If you just phase 20 out of the way and we assume that we're planning for 2021, this crisis has erupted just as all the tour operators were getting certainly the scheduled operators were getting their plans finalized for next year. These plans are obviously going to be in some disarray because we're not sure what's available, what price it's available, and how it's going to function. And I think a lot of people are going to be sandwiching what would have been not a leisurely, but a reasonably stately progress towards their 2021 launch in the end of this year. Suddenly they're going to have to set it together and maybe renegotiate over the next 2 to 3 months. And I'm just wondering, are there any particular challenges for 2021, just in terms of the technical sourcing of product that you think you're going to be facing, and how are you going to be surmounting them? Can I start with Jennifer?
Sure. I mean, again, it's the only certainty right now is the uncertainty, and it's certainly we have great partners that we have calls with weekly, who are helping us think through how we might address our processes overall. But frankly, there's a lot of very small mom and pop locations and places that we visit that they aren't even open right now. So it's very, very hard to move forward and talk about renegotiation or process improvements when people just simply can't be reached. And so that's what makes some of that really, really challenging now. What we are doing is trying to keep as many, balls moving down the field as we can right now, just with communications and dialogue, knowing that there will need to be some, once we know when we're actually operating, we're going to have to move very quickly. But then from a marketing perspective, we're trying so hard just digitally to stay connected with our potential travelers and certainly with our patrons, keeping those loyal guests close to home. They are the ones that foster our business has been built on word of mouth for the last 95 years. So that continued relationship is incredibly important to us, just like connecting with all of you is incredibly important and strengthens the community that we have. So too is with all of our travelers. So we are, again, just trying to keep as many things as close to boil as possible, knowing that we just don't know when we can move it to the front burner. So it's tough. It is tough. And so you do the best that you can with what you have, knowing that, again, I think setting these deadlines about optionality, but when you can possibly open, then helps at least get people to those milestones. So you're not having people expend too much energy unnecessarily.
Francesca, how do you, is 2021 posing any technical difficulties for you, or is it all?
I'm very, very positive right now, but my main concern is who's going to be in business. So we started, doing the contract for next year. We already started allocating, but then you're like, hold on a second, what is going to happen financially? Are they going to be able to survive those hotels that we contract, those restaurants? So it's a big question over there. It's like, yeah, I keep in touch with them on a weekly basis, but are they telling me the truth? You never know.
Robyn.
Yeah, we have a very good advantage from our philosophy, our business philosophy, in connecting with locals. And we say we give our tour members a chance to become a temporary local. And in part of doing that, Rick, the owner of the company, has always said, get out of your comfort zone. And I think we can really utilize that in trying to reboot the travel industry using some of those mom and pop restaurants and hotels that hopefully will still be open, and just teaching our travelers again to have a little bit of patience. And you don't go all the way to Europe to have the comforts of an American style meal or an American style expectations of a hotel, at least for our customers. So I think we have an advantage there of reminding people, hey, this is what happened in Europe. We're helping to restart the economy, the local economy. Maybe the 3-course meal with cassoulet and a beautiful red French wine is a bit simpler now, but it's still local and it's still your authentic experience. So I think we're going to focus on that. 2021 looks great for us. We are just starting fresh. We feel like it's going to be the rebirth of the travel industry, and whatever that means, the certainty of uncertainty, of course. And yeah, we are just looking forward to the days that we can get our groups back over there.
Terry.
Yeah, I think the one word that comes to mind to me that we as an industry will have to demonstrate, and that's agility. We have to demonstrate that we can adapt and be agile every single hour of every day. And if we can, we're going to be just fine. But if we can't, then we're going to be challenged. A couple of pieces of advice that we went out early on in this pandemic was to our members about review your terms and conditions and make sure that they are in line with what you need or your future needs. And then also start working with your partners now. You know, the majority of these folks you've worked with for many years, we need to demonstrate that we'll be flexible and work with each other through this crisis. So, but agility, I think, is really key.
I look at you mentioned you're trying to work with businesses if they're still there. The poll that we've just done, it's got some reasonably interesting results. 2/3 of the respondents feel that it's economic resources and access to financial support from government is the most pressing thing at the moment. I think governments throughout Europe are striving really hard to keep businesses, particularly small businesses, in business, but it's very difficult to do this if there is no business for them to conduct. So I'm sure that a lot of, obviously the big, not necessarily the big ones, but the stronger companies will survive, especially those with resources. But it's going to be a really tough call for a lot of people to survive into next year. But these businesses are responsive to demand, and if the demand is there, they will come back. You will see this re-emerging, I'm sure. The remaining third or remaining quarter say their biggest concern is cancellations and refunds. Alas, that's one of the few things that businesses have got to do at the moment, is process cancellations and refunds. And the technical complexity of this is something which is quite daunting from our point of view. But we may be looking at that, I hope, in a future webinar. And 9% think it's retaining talent. So these are significant responses on all fronts, but the number one issue facing our membership who are taking part in this poll is survival. And that's what they're concentrating on. Can I just switch around? It's an area which none of us, so Terry might have an angle, are experts in, but I'm really interested in the airlift running from North America to Europe. There are big questions concerning the viability of a lot of the airlines. There are also questions concerning the maintenance of the scheduled patterns that existed up until mid-March, and how far normally, and it's what I was alluding to before, is that recovery, when recovery comes, tends to be led by airlines trying to fill their spare capacity. If they are not, and they're not currently, fulfilling all their commitments on their scheduled slots, they may only reintroduce capacity in line with demand. So the recovery may not occur through spare capacity or loose capacity, but it may be much, much more gradual from the airline's point of view. And I'm just wondering, I suppose the open question to you as airlines, what are we to expect in this area? Should we be confident that the same sort of lift exists between North America and Europe that existed in 2019? Jennifer, could you start off, please?
I think the short answer is no. I think it's going to take years for the airlines to recover. I'm certainly no expert here, but when you heard this morning, I think United posted a $2 billion loss in the first quarter, and it was just a sign. You know, this was actually a good quarter. I think it's such a challenging time for the airlines right now, and I really respect how they're trying to hold their business together while waiting for, again, through this time of uncertainty. We hear from our partners in the airline industry that once demand is out there, they can restart routes within a matter of a few weeks. So that's heartening in terms of that, to play on Terry's word again, agility to come back quickly. But I think to get to the full scope of route coverage that exists, certainly that existed in 2019, will probably be several years in the making. It's again, a lot of this, the pace is going to be dependent upon when that therapeutic or vaccine's in place. So therefore, there's demand that's reliable that they can open. It's a little bit of a chicken and an egg, right? Like you know, Robyn talked about the infrastructure before. You know, you need that to operate, but if there's no demand, then you won't operate. So I think the collaboration, the communication with this industry, of our industry, with the airlines will be again more important than ever.
Robyn, how do you feel the airlines? What role do you think they've got to play?
Well, it's a huge question because we can have all of the product and all of the demand that anyone could possibly ever want or imagine. If we can't get our tour members on airplanes, then our product is, like you said, Tom, it's going to expire.
Right. That's a fairly straightforward analysis. Francesca, have you got any angle on that?
That's not my expertise at all, but my personal opinion, I agree with Jennifer, it's going to take years for the airline to recover completely. I was reading something this morning saying that now the airline need to have the middle seat empty, which, you know, I don't know if economically they can possibly fly all the time like that. I mean, it's ridiculous, but.
Well, I don't know, it may be an opportunity which has been lying in the wings for the airlines to start working with tour operators again. Terry,
yes.
I was going to feed. I hope I haven't blown your line. Over to you.
No. That's again one of those silver lining moments. We hope that they recognize the opportunity that this business partnership represents, and the indication I'm getting early. And it's changing every day, but they are seeing the value of having the partnership. So I have my first call this coming Friday with one of our major legacy carriers here in the States, and we'll continue those throughout the next 5 days. So I'll learn more, but I think the fact that they are reaching out to me, which they never really wanted to take a call from Terry Dale. What do I bring to the table? But the fact that they're reaching out to me sends a signal that they are recognizing that they need us, and we need them, obviously. So let's hope it plays out, but it'll take a while. It'll take a while.
Well, maybe we need to invite the airlines in on the next edition of this thing. It would be interesting to hear what they have to say. I want to launch another poll because we've got 350 people sitting out there. We may as well ask them their opinion. It's really about future product, and it's thinking about US travelers' sentiment and Europe product development. Which of the following do you agree with? Travelers will be looking for less crowded locations. Travel recovery will be domestic or neighboring destinations. Operators will offer new normal programs, and it's open to know what you mean by new normal, but it's up to you to interpret that statement. And operators will offer new and different destinations and attractions. Those are the questions. We're going to launch it. And please, with 350 people, it says organizers and panelists don't vote. We don't get a vote in this. This is entirely a democratic process for the audience, and we'll see how that rolls. I'm really intrigued to get back to the confidence measure. Jennifer, you said that you were really waiting on a vaccine to come through. Do you not think that a vaccine is just a component of confidence? What we need is confidence. And confidence may come from a vaccine, which we know is not going to be available much before the fourth quarter of this year. It may be through herd immunity. We don't actually know how many people have already got the disease and have recovered from it. It may be that our client base may get a sense of proportion. Someone was rather dryly pointing out that the number of people being harmed and being killed by COVID-19 is dwarfed by the number of people harmed and killed by road accidents or tobacco or alcohol, for instance. And none of these causes a massive lockdown. And maybe they just think, well, it's a sort of risk that we need to take. So I'm just really wondering, I suppose it's a very nebulous question on a nebulous subject, but do you think the vaccine is the crucial point, or are there going to be, can there be a tipping point where people start going, well, actually, if it's safe to go to New York, it's going to be safe to go to London. If it's safe to go to Chicago, I may as well go to Paris. It's much of a muchness. Do you think there's going to be that element, or are they really going to stick close to home?
Well, two things. I think, first of all, just overall confidence. Confidence comes from managing fear, right, or managing risk. And so, well, certainly there are going to be people who have different risk profiles, and I'll come back to that in a second. A lot of it right now is about the unknown of all of this, right? We're still learning data. We're still, each day there's new information that's fed to us that might be reassuring or that might be more fearful. And until there is better, consistent data and understanding of what this is, it's the angst about the unknown that makes this particularly challenging in terms of establishing confidence, I think. So do I think that elements like a therapeutic or comprehensive testing or contact tracking will help? Absolutely. And I think that will all serve towards getting us better confidence and therefore willingness to travel. I think the floodgates open when there's a vaccine. So that's a long way of saying I do think that there are baby steps that will get us towards traveling once again, but that real demand, go back to 2019, 2018, that's going to take a vaccine to kind of get us there. That all said, I do think that there are, of course, different segments of people with different risk profiles. You see that in the media every single day. I mean, here in the US, there's some people who will simply not leave their homes without any kind of mask, even if they're 6 feet apart from other people or following all of the guidelines, perhaps some might say even to an extreme. There are others who are saying, I don't understand what the big deal is, herd immunity is fine, let me just get out there and start traveling again. And there's even discrepancy among the states, certainly you see here as a result of that. So I think the same segmentation, if you will, kind of comes to the traveler. There are some people who are going to be more risk averse and less risk averse, just as there has always been. And you might see that this is why I also think some of those early travelers become very important for leading the way, like any kind of first mover. Those who are out there saying, look, I'm in Paris, I'm in Munich, I'm in these places and I'm fine. That helps to reassure people. It's like anytime we've opened up an exotic destination, do you really want to go there, fill in the blank? I was in Singapore and in February, people said, do you really want to go to Singapore? Really? Is that such a good idea? And yet I felt very comfortable and confident that I was there, even though the virus was present, because of the steps that the government at that time was taking. So, but again, there were still people who thought I had lost my mind, which, you know, that seems to be more common than not. But that it just speaks to the different levels of risk that people have and how that might play out in their overall travel preferences. So, long answer to your question, but I hope that helps clarify my point.
No, I think it's, I mean, it's very pertinent. And Francesca, I mean, you deal with very much the youth segment. And presumably, it's not so much the youth making that decision; it's their parents making that decision. They're not really making that decision for themselves. Do you think there's going to be a point where, you know, the opportunity presented balances the natural risk aversion of the situation?
I honestly think, and I'm very positive on this, I think we're going to have a vaccination before end of the year, and I'm sure 2021 is going to be brilliant. This is what right now I keep thinking. I know Italy is going to be summertime. Personally, I don't see it, but then, you know, I'm also Italian, so I see what's happening in Italy. I live the drama personally. And I'm like, I can't see it, I can't focus. But I know, you know, American as well forget quickly. America will travel again. We're talking about 2021, the last few months ahead of us. So while the next few months they're going to travel, maybe, yeah, domestically, that's fine. But then next year, they're going to come back here. We love America.
I ought to mention to the audience that Francesca comes from Vicenza, which, apart from being a beautiful town, the town of Palladio is also at the center of the coronavirus outbreak in Italy. So you've been witnessing it. Robyn, what's your feeling on this?
I think that fear and risk are a broad spectrum. Like Jennifer mentioned, everyone's going to have a different tolerance for that. I was meant to fly to Madrid on March 11th. My flight ended up being canceled and I didn't go. And people were saying to me, "Are you crazy? Why do you want to go?" And at that point, I had more of a chance of being harmed here in America than I did in Spain. Now the tables had turned and I didn't go, so it was okay. So that's just one perspective I think Americans will have in determining their own personal risk. The other thing I think is we haven't mentioned financial risk. And when we're talking about, Tom, you asked if I can go to New York, can't I go to London? Well, from a personal health and safety risk, perhaps. From a financial risk and from a logistical time commitment risk, maybe not. A lot of the unknown around regulations, lack thereof, or what kind of regulations there will be. If you get to a destination and something happens, you're stuck in that destination. In a foreign country is being very different than being stuck in your own country in a different state or even within your own state. So I don't necessarily see the correlation between those two things. I would like that to be the case. I mean, I would like people to assume if I can travel somewhere, I can travel anywhere. I think because of all of the unknown, people are going to be more wary going farther and to more foreign areas. And I think that ties back in with Jennifer saying that the vaccination is going to be key, because the vaccination is going to provide mental idea, concept that, oh, a vaccine means that I won't get stuck there, I won't be in quarantine, the flights are going to run. All of that kind of comes along with the vaccine and with regulations. If we can get European countries to agree on regulations across borders, people at least know going into it what they might be facing.
I think that's very well put. I mean, Terry, it's the unknowns. It's the unknown unknowns. Donald Rumsfeld strikes back. The wisdom of Rumsfeld rings down through the ages. What's your take on this?
I have a hard time thinking Rumsfeld and wisdom, but anyway, setting politics aside, I do think it's important for us as an industry to look at how we instill that confidence, and can we do that through some consistent protocols that we agree that, you know, whether it's a hotel or a ground operator or a DMC, that we're taking these consistent steps to ensure to our customers that we're very aware and we are going to protect them. So it's something that we're looking at. I have to tell you, Jennifer, just to update you, I haven't been able to find yet the right health expert and safety expert to guide us through this. I did go through this with the cruise industry years ago, but I do think that there's something that we can communicate as a segment saying, we understand, and these are measures that we are taking industry-wide. And that will hopefully help. But
it's a very interesting point you're raising, Terry, because the one of the issues I think every panelist here shares is that their clients, in broad terms, will use buses or coaches at some stage, and this is of huge importance to the groups market, and it's really important that people can use such transportation with confidence. And I think, you know, Robyn's point was a very good point about willing to take risks closer to home and not willing to take the same risks further away from home. If people are willing to get on subway trains and get on buses locally, they may well be willing to take that risk long haul. But we shall see. But I think certainly working on mitigation of risk when it comes to such things as coach transportation and river cruises is something that maybe we can even work together on. It's a vital point. Now we've got the results from the poll, and 56%. It's not an exclusive vote, so you could vote for more than one. 56% of the people felt that travellers will be looking for less crowded destinations. I've nearly made a comment. I'll ask you to comment on that in a second. They've got 71%, so this is the clear winner. Travel recovery will be domestic and based around neighbourhoods, first of all, and then 32% felt that operators will offer a new normal program, which means that they're going to modify their program because of the current situation. And only 16%, so less, round about a sixth, reckon that operators actually offer new and different destinations. So in some ways, that's the clear loser out of this poll of intentions. Do you think people will be, we'll put the domestic recovery to one side. Do you think travellers will be looking for less crowded destinations? I mean, is this how you're going to change your program? Can we just start with Francesca? I mean, are you going to turn around and go, actually, we're going to pick places that we know are less frequented?
I personally think they will always travel in the main destination, the big destination. We're talking about, we deal with educational travel, and they will go to Rome, they will go to Paris. They will not go outside of Rome to see the catacombs, which are amazing, but they're not going there. They're going to well-known places. So no, I don't think from our point of view, a new product in less crowded areas will work.
Right, so I've got one or two great questions coming up. Robyn, please, what do you think?
Well, I'm curious to see what will happen with the cruise industry, if that will naturally make some of the more popular destinations less crowded, like Venice, like Barcelona, which were just completely overrun with day trippers. I wonder if the question, really the way that the audience was reading the question in terms of less crowded means more social distancing imposed by the travel companies. So not that you're taking people to less crowded destinations, but that customers are hoping that the destinations will be socially distanced appropriately.
Yeah, okay. Terry?
Well, I think that the less traveled destination movement had started, and I think it'll continue. You know, for the mature, seasoned traveler who's been to the iconic destinations from around the world, absolutely, they're going to look for the off the beaten path, and I hate those phrases in our industry. We use the same thing over and over again. But anyway, but the places that haven't been traveled to previously, I think will become more of interest based on the customer demographic, because everyone's demographics change or are different. So it determines, or it is determined by who your customer base is.
Jennifer.
So this is sort of ironic. It's the other side of the over-tourism coin, isn't it? So it's the same issue, just for a different reason. And in this case, I think the trends, as Terry alluded to, were already in place. So we've been beating the drum about small is big for quite some time, in the form of smaller groups traveling together, more space on small ships or river cruises for guests to enjoy and spread out. And that will take on again, equally valuable, but perhaps a slightly different meaning right now. I think that, at least we're seeing with our travelers, people will still want to go to the same destinations. But I think your point about the off the beaten path, the hidden pathways, getting local, that's going to mean more than anything. I don't know about all of you, but I'm really tired of being socially distant. I'm really tired of, especially for this industry, not seeing people and engaging with people except through electronics and technology, which is a wonderful thing. And it's, at least we have that. But I want to sit across the table at a real restaurant in Vicenza with a real owner and real wait staff, and talk to them about what their life was like. How'd you do it? How'd you get through? Because it's exposed our common humanity. And so I think no matter what the destination is, if you want to see the Eiffel Tower or the Colosseum or the Tower Bridge because that's iconic in your mind, and you think that, I don't know when I'll be able to see it again, I don't want to take this for granted, I want to see it now. Or it's just exploring those small towns that aren't going to be as well traveled. There's going to be a desire to go deeper in much more meaningful ways, and that we won't take travel for granted, perhaps the way we may have started to, by it being so accessible.
Okay, I've got one more poll question that I want to launch now, and it's the crucial question: is when does the audience think recovery is going to occur? And I'm just going to launch it now. It goes, thinking about the recovery, when do you expect the first significant wave of US visitors will arrive in Europe? July, August, September this year? That's the third quarter. The fourth quarter, or we wait until 2021? Let's see how that one rolls in. As it's rolling in, I suppose I'm just going to turn around to my panelists, because we've got only a couple of minutes left. And just for you to, if I had to put you on the spot, when do you think we're going to start to see more than a trickle, that we're going to start running groups? Let's put it like that. When are we going to start running groups in Europe from North America? Jennifer, when do you think that's going to start?
The word significant, I'd say 2021.
Right, okay. Francesca?
Same, 2021.
Robyn?
I have to agree. I think significant 2021.
Right, okay, and Terry?
I'm going to take the guidance of my panelists and say 2021.
Right, okay, well, that's funny. That leaves me out on a limb, because I'm putting money on something occurring that looks remotely like normal in October, November, December. But remember that the latter half of October, November, and December are a fairly low season. Early October is obviously quite high season. I would point out that as the votes are rolling in, and we're running out of time here, the most of the money is on 2021. At the moment, 3% think they're going to start seeing some action in July, August, and September. 27% are saying that it's going to be October, November, December, and 69% think it's going to be 2021. It really leaves, we've got a number of questions, I'm afraid, that have been posed that we haven't been able to answer. I will say to everybody that posed the questions, someone did ask, how do we stop tour operators from taking unfair advantage of suppliers? I leave that one hanging in the air, other than it's not something we can stop. But I just want to thank all the panelists. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Francesca. Thank you, Robyn, and thank you, Terry, for spending time with us. It's been a great hour that you've spent with us. I'm sure we will meet again. We'll meet again, as the Queen said. She didn't say when, but that's neither here or there. Thank you very much. It's been great having you. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I'll leave
Bye.
you with
Great
one
to be
last thing.
here.
The coronavirus benefit gig that was done by Lady Gaga. People were very disappointed that the Rolling Stones chose to do "You Can't Always Get What You Want." Somebody wanted them to do "Brown Sugar" because brown sugar has got the perfect mondegreen. You have to look that up if you want to know what it means. It's a misheard lyric, where with the line, "I bet your mama was a Cajun queen and all her boyfriends had COVID-19." This is the line that everyone runs. Okay, with that rather unedifying note, I will leave you and have a great time.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Tom.
you. Bye. Thank you.